That's got nothing to do with Jimmy Jones in Chicago today, right? But shouldn't we be talking to these guys in Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia? Like, pay up, dudes, pay up, because slavery is bad, and if white people are money for it, well, and so do you. Are you saying you get less money? Well, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just pay up. Slavery's bad. This slavery carried on after the abolition of the slave trade by the British. It had also started hundreds of years before. So let me see. These countries were practicing slavery hundreds of years before the Brits, and a long time after. Many of the, as you know, Arab nations only ceased slavery. Black Arab nations only ceased slavery in the 1900s, in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. Why is that, I wonder, if there's no slavery in Islam, right? Should Britain demand reparations from North Africa? Man, I say yes. I say go for it. I say, hey, pay up. It's time to move on. That's what Rafe says. It's time to move on. But you know what? You know what? If we're all going to be paying each other money, what the heck? So colonialism benefits. Let's turn away from slavery and let's look at colonialism a little more broadly. Did I miss any questions? Conociendo el Islam says, if we follow leftist ideas, then Spaniards, Portuguese, and Italians have to pay money compensations because they bought and sold many slaves. Well, yes. Okay. So, but then, dude, there was a lot more slavery happening in Africa by taking slaves from Europe than the other way around. Let's be blunt about that. All right. So let me see. Yeah. Carol B says, when all slavery ends, we can talk reparations for living former slaves. Well, yeah, we've discussed some of the legal aspects of that. Uzbekistan should pay to the Pakistani Indians for the killing of 20 million. Well, I mean, if that happened, well, yeah. So when Horse says, dude, Horse, you've got a picture of a mule, so it becomes progressive reparations, similar to progressive taxes. Those who make less pay little or no taxes. Those who make more pay all the taxes. Well, the reason there's a progressive tax, this is a communist idea, because what they want is, so under Marxism, there are 10 major pillars of Marxism, right? One of those is the abolition of the family. But the other is that when you die, your children inherit nothing. That money is seized by the state for the communist dream, right? To be used for the betterment of all, for the greater good. So a progressive tax rate is a way to incrementally introduce a greater and greater tax rate, which ultimately robs you of all your money. So they would eventually add more. So remember, there was this whole death tax, right? There's the whole estate tax. This is a way to, you've already paid taxes your whole life, and now you die and you pass money on it, suddenly that gets taxed again. You've already paid tax on that your whole life, you invested it. So this is a way to take, it's a communist plot, quite bluntly, to take that inheritance and give as much to the state as possible, so that I mean, you work it out. It's an entirely socialist move based on Marx's ideas. Okay, let me just take that away. So many of the former colonies of the Caribbean are now successful middle-income countries. What people don't realize is many of these colonized countries are very successful middle-income countries. Let's go back to the places where the slaves came from, and those places are S-holes, as we probably all aware. Okay. So what disadvantage has colonialism caused to those living in the former British colonies of the Caribbean, and compared to whom, right? So these former colonies are now successful middle-income countries. The GDP per head of the Bahamas is higher than Portugal, Greece, Hungary, Poland. I live in Poland, Malaysia, and is comparable to Spain and Italy. Let me say that again. The GDP per head of the Bahamas is higher than Portugal, higher than Greece, Hungary, Poland, Malaysia, and comparable to Spain and Italy. That's fascinating. And these same idiots are wanting Britain to pay them money, to give them free money, your money, if you live in Britain. No, you never hear that, do you? That these guys are actually doing really well. It's like, oh my gosh, those Europeans, they stole all our wealth. Well, these black people are stealing even more of your wealth. You need to go ask them for a little bit of money. So Barbados, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, and other former British slave colonies have higher rankings on the UN's Human Development Index than Brazil, Mexico, or many other Spanish-speaking South American countries. Isn't that fascinating that these British colonies have a higher standard of living and a high GDP, better than other countries where they came from, or other countries where other people were running things. So yeah, you don't hear that. You don't hear how well some of these guys are doing. That's fascinating. Why is that? Don't they want to destroy their narrative? Okay, so let me see. It's not about facts, it's about cash. So, how has the British Empire disadvantaged Caribbean nations? It's not clear how, since there seems to be a great deal of benefit to them, right? Let's compare the nations of the Caribbean with modern West Africa, the original homelands of the Caribbean slaves, to see what life is like. GDP per capita in Benin is $1,430, give or take, right? This is GDP per capita in Benin. Actually, you know what? Let's find out where the heck Benin is. I didn't look it up on the map. I did a bit of research, but my computer's got problems again. That's not going to happen. Okay, let me try and do it the hard way. Google. Nope. Let me try again. Darn it. Nope. Yeah, sorry. My computer is having issues. The GDP per capita in Benin is $1,430. Barbados is $17,000, over 10 times higher. Fascinating. Benin was a major slave trader, just so by the way. Life expectancy is Benin is 62, Barbados is 79. You live 17 years longer. Now, should we be writing checks to well-off areas of the world like Barbados? Beautiful areas of the world too. Why not focus on countries and areas that are impoverished and require aid, not attached to alleged attempts to cleanse your soul? This is what Rafe Mankul Hyder says, or Hyder Mankul says. Now, obviously, aid, I think, has been another abject failure because financial aid has not worked very well, has it? So let me see. Every single Afro-Asiatic countries have benefited from colonization. Educational institutions, railroads, railways, hospitals, legal systems, everything we've seen us from the West, exactly. That would be true. Just wanted to mention that the Latin name of the city of Cologne in Germany is Colonia Claudia Ara Agrippinensium, or in short, Colonia. Okay, it's a colony. So would that make it a Roman colony? Greece has been under siege for decades. Relentless mass media slander, bankrupting the historical 2004 Olympics, flooding of personal debt. Okay. Yeah, I don't know too much about that, so I can't comment very well on that. Okay, so let's see. Now, so the first rule of African slavers is we don't talk about African slavery. It's like the first rule of Fight Club. We don't talk about how Africans were slave owners and were massive in the slave trade. So here we have an African country reckons with its history of selling slaves, January 30th, 2018. Okay, in Awida, Benin, a man walks past the statue of Francisco blah, 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 major slave merchant.